The knock came at 2:47 in the morning. 3 slow, deliberate taps. Not frantic, not desperate, just patient. Like whatever was on the other side of that door had all the time in the world and already knew I was going to open it. I remember the exact feeling. That half-asleep state where your brain hasn't fully caught up to your body yet. The kind of moment where you're moving before you're really thinking. The porch light was on. I could see the shadow through the frosted glass panel beside the door. A person, standing completely still, not knocking again, just waiting. And something in the back of my mind, something I should have listened to, said don't. But I didn't listen. I turned the handle. And what happened in the next 4 hours changed my life in ways I am still untangling years later. If you've ever felt that split-second hesitation before doing something you couldn't undo, then you already understand exactly where this story is going. Stay with me, and if this is your first time here and you want stories that actually get under your skin, real, strange, human stories that make you question what you thought you knew, hit subscribe right now, because what I'm about to tell you is not something you're going to want to stop halfway through. His name was Daniel. That's what he told me anyway. He was standing on my porch in a gray hoodie, soaking wet despite the fact that it hadn't rained in 3 days, holding nothing in his hands and smiling in a way that was just a fraction too wide to feel comfortable. He said his car had broken down about a mile up the road, said his phone was dead, said he just needed to use a phone for 2 minutes to call his brother and he'd be out of my hair. 2 minutes. That's all. And I thought, okay. It's cold. He looks harmless. What kind of person turns away someone standing in the cold at 3 in the morning? That thought, right there, is worth pausing on, because it's the same thought that runs through the mind of almost everyone who has ever been in this situation. The fear of seeming unkind is one of the most powerful forces in human psychology. Researchers at the University of Maryland have studied what they call prosocial override, the tendency for people to suppress their own instinctive threat responses in order to avoid appearing rude or cold-hearted. In plain English, we are wired, socially and culturally, to give strangers the benefit of the doubt, and that wiring, under the right circumstances, can be used against us with surgical precision. Daniel wasn't random. That's what took me the longest to understand. He had watched the house. He knew I lived alone. He had noticed that I kept late hours, that my bedroom light stayed on past midnight, that I answered the door in the past when a neighbor knocked late asking to borrow jumper cables. He had done his homework. And the broken down car, the dead phone, the wet clothes, all of it was a construction. A performance designed for one specific audience. Me. I let him in. I handed him my phone. He made a call, or seemed to. He spoke quietly into it for about 90 seconds, said something about the intersection near Pine and 4th, said he'd wait on the porch, and handed it back to me. And then he smiled again and said, "Thank you." He walked back toward the door, and I genuinely thought that was it. I thought I had done something decent for a stranger in need, and that was the end of the story. It wasn't. About 20 minutes later, I went to plug my phone in and noticed something wrong. The screen had a new app on it, just one, tucked into the second page where I wouldn't see it immediately. A remote access application, the kind that, once installed, allows someone to see everything on your device. Your location, your messages, your passwords, your banking app, everything. In the 90 seconds Daniel had spent on my porch making his fake phone call, he hadn't been talking to his brother. He had been installing software. And by the time I deleted it and changed every password I had, the question was no longer what he had taken. It was how much. The answer turned out to be enough. Enough to open 3 credit lines in my name over the following 6 weeks. Enough to redirect 2 direct deposit payments. Enough to spend 11 months and more than $4,000 in legal and recovery fees trying to undo what a stranger accomplished in 90 seconds on my front porch at 2:47 in the morning. 11 months, $4,000, and a level of distrust in my own judgment that took even longer to heal. This is the kind of story that the folks at Shadowlight Stories exist to tell, not because it's entertaining in a detached way, but because it's real, and because real is the only thing that actually prepares you for the world as it is, rather than the world as you wish it were. Because here is the thing about what happened to me that I didn't understand until much later. Daniel was not unusual. He was not some rare criminal genius operating in the shadows. What he did was a known technique. It has a name. Social engineers. People who manipulate others through psychological pressure rather than technical hacking, call it pretexting. And it is one of the fastest growing forms of personal crime in the United States right now. The FBI's Internet Crime Complaint Center reported over 800,000 cases in a single recent year, with losses exceeding $10 billion, not from people clicking suspicious links, not from elaborate online scams, from human interaction, from trust, from the simple, devastating act of opening a door. And here is the part that I have thought about more than anything else. The part that still keeps me up sometimes. Daniel never broke in. He never threatened me. He never raised his voice or made a single demand. He just stood there, wet and patient, and let my own humanity do all the work. My instinct to help, my discomfort with being unkind, my need to believe that a person standing in the cold at 3 in the morning was just a person in need. He didn't manipulate me. He manipulated the version of myself that I'm most proud of. Picture this for a second. Imagine a lock so sophisticated that it can only be opened from the inside. That's not a metaphor for something abstract. That is literally what happened. The most secure door, the most reliable alarm system, means nothing if the person inside decides to disengage it for a stranger. And that is what made this not just a crime story, but something much more uncomfortable. It was a story about the gap between who we want to be and what that wanting costs us. About the way decency can be weaponized by someone who has studied it long enough. About the terrifying possibility that our kindness, the thing we've been told our whole lives is our best quality, can be the exact thing that makes us vulnerable. What would you do? That's the question I couldn't stop asking myself in those 11 months, and I've come to believe it's the wrong question. The better question isn't what would you do in that moment, it's what would you know before that moment. Because here's what I know now that I wish someone had told me before that night. You can be kind and still be cautious. You can care about a stranger's well-being and still not open your door at 3 in the morning. You can offer to call someone's emergency contact yourself from behind a closed door without ever handing them your phone or your lock. There are 100 ways to be a good person that do not require you to override your instincts at 2:47 in the morning. And none of those ways make you cold or selfish. They make you someone who is still here to be kind another day. The version of me that opened that door was not naive. I want to be clear about that. I was a reasonably intelligent, reasonably cautious adult who made one decision in a half-asleep moment that cascaded into something I could not have fully anticipated. And that's exactly why this story matters. Not because it happened to someone careless, but because it happened to someone careful. Someone who thought they were doing the right thing. Someone who trusted their read on a situation and found out, too late, that the situation had been engineered specifically to fool that trust. There's a question I want to leave you with, and I mean this as something to actually sit with, not just something to scroll past. If someone knocked on your door right now, not a neighbor you recognized, not a face you knew, just a stranger in the dark asking for 2 minutes of help, what would you actually do? Not what you think you should do. What would you actually do? Drop that in the comments below, because I think the answers are going to surprise a lot of people watching this. And I genuinely want to know, because every single response tells us something true about how we navigate trust and fear and the pull between protecting ourselves and staying human. If this story made you think, if it got under your skin a little, the way I think it should, please share it. Not as a cautionary tale in the lectury sense. Share it because someone you know might need to hear it before they have their own version of this night. A parent, a college student living alone for the first time, a friend who always answers the door without thinking. Sometimes the most protective thing we can do for the people we love is hand them a story they weren't expecting to need. That door never looked the same to me again. Not because I became afraid of people, but because I finally understood something I hadn't before. Kindness without awareness is not virtue. It's just an open door.